Welcome, everyone, to the February 21st and the very first off-season episode of the Zooch and Wilde podcast. Zooch, how are the football withdrawals going? It's
Uh,
been a couple weeks.
they're going okay. It didn't help that the Super Bowl wasn't very good
No,
from basically start to finish. It wasn't even I guess I was happy the Eagles won. I didn't really have a rooting interest in who won or lost. And I thought the conversation, I literally told resident Sooner fan Cody when I saw him at work, I was like, "Hey, I guarantee you, if I turn the TV on right now, something on the ESPN headlines or Colin Cowherd show is going to be like, what does this do to Mahomes' legacy?" And I swear to God, verbatim on the herd,
well,
it said, "What does this mean for Mahomes?" So I hate that stuff. You know me. I hate the
yeah, no.
one game
I also hate
deciding
that
that kind of
Colin
stuff.
Cowherd's leaving LA. It's sad. I miss to go, but we have a great show. We're gonna get into a way too early top 10, a little bit of college basketball, and do a new segment, blind rankings at the end. So you're gonna want to stay tuned to that. But before we get into that, yeah, Colin Cowherd, he's leaving me in LA. I missed story time. When my car's aux was broken for probably 2 weeks, I had to listen to local talk radio, and I'm not an LA sports fan, so I'm a San Francisco sports fan. So one of the channels, they seem to always have like just Dodger games and like Laker talk, and I'm like, I don't want that at all. But lo and behold, Colin Cowherd, he's based in LA, so his national radio show was shown over the local radio waves around the time where I was driving for work the most. So I listened to nothing but Colin Cowherd and Dan Patrick for like 2 weeks. So
I
all
don't
right,
mind Dan Patrick. I'm not. I like the memes of Colin Cowherd. Like every time I see the meme of the Ben Simmons
LeBron,
is
yeah.
I, I laugh every time. I frequently use that meme just because in context, I honest to God could not even tell you if Ben Simmons is still playing in the
I think
NBA.
I want to say he's on the Nets still playing. That's a different question. Oh
Yeah,
well.
there was that whole 76ers barrage of like Jaleel Okafor, Markel Fultz, Ben Simmons. They really, really, really messed
I
up
mean,
about.
even Joel Embiid seems to be like fizzling a little bit right now.
Yeah, it was. They won like 10 games one year, and the most they ever got was, I think, like this. They didn't even make a conference final, right? I seriously
No,
don't
they
watch a
haven't.
ton of
They
NBA,
haven't.
so
And that's why we don't talk about NBA. We leave that to other people. But what we are going to talk about is we ended with a cliffhanger. Our very last regular season episode, we said the first time we are sitting talking to you guys again, we would bring our way too early pre-spring ball top 10s. We were thinking about doing top 25. That would take way too long. We would honestly probably have to dedicate a full show if we did a top 25 just to
all
that.
right.
So we're doing way too early top 10s. There's a couple teams I had to leave out. Like, I'm just going to get this off the bat. Had to leave BYU out. For reasons, I think BYU is like a perma 20 to 10 seed. Sorry. Had to leave LSU out. LSU fans are going to hate me because they have Nussmeier coming back. But with Brian Kelly, I will believe it when I see it. So I just want to get those two things out of the way. Zooch, do you have anything to get out of the way before we go down our lists?
The only thing I'll say is I don't. If I have, there's not a huge difference between like my 1 and my 5, if that makes like. I guess my 1 and my 1s through 5, maybe even 7 are teams I think have a real shot at winning the national championship. But I don't think I might have this team at 3 and this team at. There's not a huge difference. It's just like they're basically the same team. You just kind of had to put them somewhere. But yeah, I'll say my after 5. It's not necessarily I don't think they can win the national championship. I think the teams above them have a better shot. Obviously, they're ranked higher. But
That's
the 1
fair.
through 5 ranking, I don't think necessarily one of them has the edge over the other one.
That is fair. That is completely fair. All right. Well, I guess we'll just go back and forth on this. I'm going to start it off. Number 10, and the way too early, top 25, subject to change. This is always subject to change. I have at number 10 the Fightin' Illini of Illinois. Brett
Illinois.
Bielema ended the year ranked, returns a lot of talent, but mainly returns Luke Altmaier. Now, call me crazy, but Illinois, it seems to be a little bit of a balance between Indiana and Boise State. And hold on with me, not by the way that their team's constructed, but by the way this offseason and the pressure that's going to get put on them. Indiana is a team. They have a good coach in the Big Ten, and being in the Big Ten, you are given the benefit of a doubt. We saw it all year. You can lose a game, get blown out. There's a path for that 3 to 4th best team in the Big Ten to make it still. We saw that. And it's a little Boise State where it seems like everything I researched had Illinois somewhere between 9 and 15. That's got to be the highest Illinois has been preseason ranked in a while. So it's going to be, can they live up to expectation? I think they can live up to an expectation. I know there's some delusional people in that fan base, like will be a delusional fan base that I'll say next for my 9 or my 8. But I think this is a team that can seriously sneak into the playoffs a la Indiana style. So Illinois at my 10.
Illinois, your 10. Okay, with my number 10, I'm going with the Fighting Mario Cristobals of Miami. No, I don't. I think they're on the right track. I think last year, even though it didn't end the way they wanted to, I think they were kind of, I don't know. I guess I would kind of say they're like one of those fledging on like, I think they could have probably won one playoff game. I don't think they would have beaten like Texas, Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State, or like the teams that were kind of in there and people thought they could win the national championship. And like I said, I know that last season didn't end how they wanted it to, but the issues they had were kind of issues all season. They never kind of
it's very true.
Went away. But another year, we'll see how replacing Cam Ward goes. But I mean, it will be hard to replace him, but I don't necessarily think, unless that defense is as bad as it was last year, you need to have a Heisman contender as your quarterback to win the national championship. I mean, that was proven this last year. The Final Four team, really, if you look at almost the entire playoff, there's not other than Gabriel, there was not a single team who like you
that had like a dynamic guy.
Yeah, and like
final. I mean, Penn State probably had flashes, but that was about it.
You know, he wasn't gonna. We'll get to them later, but anyway, I think Miami, if they don't make the playoff next year, and I think next year at 10 and I think the SMU thing
Crystal ball will be feeling hot. He will be feeling,
and you know, I think Clemson will be ranked higher than them. That's a kind of a preview of who I have. One of the teams I have higher than them. But I think, if they go 10-2, they'll probably be in the 12-team playoffs because they'll be entering the season at a better spot than what they did last year.
That's fair. No. And just like that, we're going to move on to my number 9, not Miami, but I have who I think for the second year in a row. I was almost right last year, hopefully right this year. My number 9 team is who I think is going to be the best team coming out of the Big 12. I have the Kansas State Wildcats. I love Chris Kleeman. I love what he does. They always come prepared to play. In Zooch, we always say Kansas State is a little like Oklahoma State. They seem to play better when they have lower expectations. Everyone in the Big 12, they're going, oh my gosh, shiny new object, Arizona State. Oh my gosh, shiny new object, BYU. Oh man, Rocco Beck's coming back at Iowa State. Like they snuck their way into the Big 12 title. Like they're gonna do something. I just love Kansas State, returning quarterback, a lot of raws. If Avery can reach his full potential, I really think Kansas State can be the Big 12 representative for the playoff. But it is the Big 12. Got him at 9.
9. Okay. I like that pick because, like you said, they're kind of, and that's what's weird about the Big 12. Outside of maybe Colorado because of the Deion Sanders effect, that's kind of how it goes with, you know, their
It's always someone
teams.
unexpected. It
It's
always seems
always
to be
someone
someone else.
unexpected, and there's such a seesaw in that conference. Like Oklahoma State, I swear to God, could go like 11-1 next year, and I'd be like, "Yep, that makes sense." They were absolutely terrible last year, but for some reason, they're good this year. And with that being said, I have former Big 12 team that always has a lot of expectations. Texas A&M is my number
Wow.
9 team. I think that it's now or never, really, for I shouldn't say now or never, but this is their time to pounce. Second year coach. I honestly thought they weren't that bad last year. They ended with 4 losses. I think they ended 9-4,
Yeah.
which is
One of
what
them
they
was
were doing
Notre
under
Dame, but
Jimbo
like,
Fisher.
yeah.
But I think if you look at it, you're like, all right, lost at Texas, lost in Notre Dame. South Carolina, I believe they lost to as well. I don't remember what their 4th loss was.
I'm not sure. We're in off-season mode.
Yeah, they didn't have that. And I'll look it up real quick just to make sure I'm not just completely making stuff up. They didn't have that like loss that makes no sense if that.
No, that makes sense, and it's true. They beat most of the teams that they should have beat. The teams they lost to were really good.
Okay, so 8-5. They did lose to USC in the Vegas Bowl, which I completely forgot about. But nope, they did. They lost to Auburn in 4 OTs. Anyway, like
that'll do it.
Yeah, like they had, the Notre Dame loss. The Texas game was relatively competitive. Bowl games that aren't playoff games, I don't really put that much thought into. Like I honestly, they're meaningless in a big way to me. Like, so I think that they will be vastly improved. I think they kind of got the offense going last year. The Texas pretty much shut down everybody. I mean, even that Ohio State game was.
Yeah.
Ohio State had 2 defensive, or no, they had the pick 6 and the kick return. So they shut down that Ohio State offense, kind of like Michigan did, and no one else really did that. So that's my number 9 team.
So similar to your pick, I have another SEC team where it's not now or never, but highest expectations this program has had ever. I mean, in my opinion, I'm sure a fan of their program will tell me a time where they had higher expectations. But at my number 8 team, I have the South Carolina Gamecocks. It's the only team on my list that didn't have at least a decent year last year. Even Illinois ended the year ranked. South Carolina had some bad, they were ranked, but they had some bad losses. But Shane Beamer, they returned Lenore Sellers, who's going to be on a lot of people's top 3 Heisman lists going into the year. And I think it's a weakened SEC with the NIL. A lot of people said it. Well, what I'm saying right now is not new, but you have a vulnerable Bama, a vulnerable Tennessee. Georgia's going to be good. We get that. Georgia's going to be really, really good. A vulnerable Bama, vulnerable Tennessee, vulnerable, I would say Texas A&M and LSU. Texas is going to be good, but South Carolina's looking at themselves, vulnerable Ole Miss. South Carolina could look at themselves and be like, why can't we be the 3rd best team, even the 2nd best team? So for that reason, South Carolina at my number 8.
And that's to go off that point. That's what's really kind of to me interesting about going into next year is it almost feels that way in every conference that, and we'll see how like the transfer portal after spring shakes things out. But it does kind of seem to me that a lot of the conferences are more up for grabs going into next year than they have been previously. Like, I think everyone, for the most part, had Texas and Georgia as the locks last year for the SEC. They had Ohio State, Oregon for the Big Ten. And not that Texas, I think, is going to be really good, but Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State, Bama, those teams aren't as, like you said, aren't as scary as maybe they were previously. So I do think it's a way to get in, especially for these two conferences. I should state that the SEC and the Big Ten, to get those 10 wins. That should be, I mean, your goal should be to win every game. But if you're in one of those leagues and you finish 10-2, I think you have like a 97% chance of being in the playoffs, basically.
Pretty much.
So you did your number 7, and it was South Carolina.
8 South Carolina.
8. All right, sorry, 8 South Carolina.
We're trudging along, baby.
My number 8 team, and I'm not going to lie, it's going to be a risky one. And a lot of this depends on one player. And I am kind of going against my own code here of not falling into the trap that we kind of see in all of sports, of the team gets, like, someone is about to get fired and the team gets hot and saves their job with like a 4-game stretch. You know, we've seen it in the NCAA tournament. We've seen it in the NFL. We've seen it in everything. Like, a coach team gets hot for a little bit, but it's a diamond, I guess. Mm-hmm. Not a diamond. It's a diamond in the rough. Wouldn't make sense, but it's like a mirage, I guess. And that's Florida. The Florida Gators.
Oh, Sunbelt Billy. Here we go.
And I've given him a lot of crap, but they, like, not their highest expectations ever. Like, I'm not gonna forget about the Tim Tebow years, all that kind of stuff. But when you look back on them last year, they started like just horrific. I mean, got killed by Miami. Yeah. That A&M game was bad. The Tennessee, like, really around that Tennessee game is, I guess, when things kind of picked up for them, even though it was a loss. But came out and killed Kentucky, and then they got murdered by Texas. But they finished beating LSU, Ole Miss. Florida State was absolutely dreadful last year, and then they beat Tulane in the bowl game. But if you go back to what people were saying in the beginning of last year, right? Like, oh, if Florida doesn't start out 6-1, they're not going to go to a bowl game. And literally the opposite of that happened. They were at 1, 2, 3. They were 4-5 going into that LSU, Ole Miss, that Georgia. 1 sec. They were 4-3 going into that Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State streak, which was like everyone was saying was the hardest like in the sport last year, and won 3 of the games and were pretty competitive with Georgia. So I don't 100% know that it will translate, but like DJ Lagway did look just like incredible last year.
He looked really solid. And
what he was doing
when he wasn't hurt too, he looked really, really good.
Yeah, and Florida still gets recruits, all that stuff. And I'm going to pull up their schedule too, because I had it and I accidentally clicked off of it. But, looking at it this year, they have the Miami game. They go to LSU. They get Texas at home. It's still a hard schedule at A&M. The Georgia game's in Jacksonville again. They have to go to Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Florida State are at home. They could go 10-2 with that, like 10-2 with that schedule, and they'd be in the top 10. Like, that's kind of how I look at it. As an early top 10 is like, it's not necessarily who I think will be the preseason top 10. I guess like that we could just pull up the rankings from this how the year ended this year and be like, all right, well, there's your top 10. To me, I kind of look at this as who I think the best 10 teams in football will be. And I think at the end of the year, Florida will either be 9-3 or 10-2. And
that's fair. No, that's very fair. That's very, very fair. At my number 7 team, I have the Oregon Ducks, ranked a little lower than a lot of other maybe projections have them, just because I think they're losing a lot. And I think Dylan Gabriel did a lot more than I think people realize for that offense last year, being as efficient as he was. And I think look, and I know Dante Moore is supposed to be this stud, right? Number one QB in his class coming out of Detroit, Michigan. I think he's from Detroit, Michigan. I know he's from Michigan, but for some reason, I can't get the stink of the Dante Moore I saw at UCLA out of my head. And that is the difference. Who was the Oregon quarterback, Zooch, that beat Ohio State in like 2021? Anthony Brown?
I think so. Yeah, like
Anthony Brown's a fine quarterback, right? He's good. That Oregon team lost in the Pac-12 championship. That Oregon team didn't make, I think, a New Year's Six bowl game that year. So when you look at these things, I think that's what's kind of holding me back is the quarterback at Oregon. But I have him at 7 because I just believe in Dan Lanning. I believe he's got next guys up. That defense is still going to play hard. Still going to be tough to play in Autzen. So that reason I got Oregon at my number 7.
Is your number 7? I like that pick because, like you said, Gabriel's a big loss specifically because of the reason, like how he didn't really make any mistakes. Like then that's a missed. Like DJ Lagway is one thing, right? Like you see him, you're like, oh my god, this guy's like unbelievable. Like,
Yeah,
look at the plays he makes. You're not going to say that about Dylan Gabriel, really, but DJ Lagway is also probably, because of how he plays, going to make mistakes sometimes. You're like, all right, like, it's a double-edged sword. Like, you don't want to tell him, like, hey, tone down, like, they're trying to break 4 tackles and throw the ball 40 yards down the field, because sometimes that works, and you're like, oh my god, it was 3rd and 17, and we just scored a touchdown. Other times,
yes.
He'll lose the ball, and whatever happens. But no, I like that pick at number 7. My number 7 team for the upcoming year, subject to change, like you said, is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
All right.
I think that unless that team goes undefeated, it's going to be hard for them to crack the top 5. And obviously they aren't going to get unless the stuff changes, they're not going to get a top 4 seed. They knew that, going into all this, that it's conference champions. But I honestly think after this last season and I still hold, even though they lost the game, I think that Marcus Freeman is a better coach than I would put Kirby Smart ahead of him. I would put. I think I would probably say I think he's a little bit better than
Sam Pittman ahead of him.
Sam Pittman, yeah. Hey, he survived again. He's a survivor. Sam Pittman. I think Marcus Freeman though and I think he'll end up in the NFL one day. Like I don't know how soon that will be, but I do think he will end up there. It's just kind of that's how when we talked about it before, that's how coaching is heading. Like you're seeing less and less of the, a decade ago or when we were younger, whoever the Falcons would hire, I can't even, what was the dude with like super white slicked back hair? Mike Smith, I think.
Mike Smith, yeah.
Like do you remember like every coach that got hired was kind of like that?
Yeah.
Like the older, like, all right, well, they started coaching.
They're all younger now.
1984 and finally got a head coaching job. And yeah, they're all younger now. Like even in the NFL, you're seeing like these younger and younger guys get hired. But I think he made Notre Dame a destination school again, which it really has not been probably since Lou Holtz was there. I mean, it's not like they would have like decent recruiting classes, but it's not like anyone was like, oh, I really want to go play for Charlie Weiss. Like Brian Kelly, even at LSU, is showing that he's struggling to hold on to top tier recruits. They lost a guy to Michigan. It was not a great recruiting year overall for LSU. So yeah, I like Notre Dame at 7. I think they'll probably be in the playoff again. I know I said earlier the top 5. I would probably put them still in terms of recruiting and stuff like that under the Ohio States, Georgias, Texas. And I don't know if that's ever going to change, but I definitely think they have a shot to win the national championship.
Well, great minds think alike, actually, because at my number 6 team, I have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, like you said, and for all the reasons that you explained. I love what Marcus Freeman is doing. They do return some talent. I'm interested to see the quarterback, not because I think Riley Leonard was as big of a deal to them as like Dylan Gabriel was to Oregon. I'm just interested to see like who is their quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, is it that guy? What is it? Who is that Italian guy that came in for like a drive in the semis?
Yeah.
Like, is that the guy, or is he like a senior? Like, I don't know. Is Ty Buckner gonna become the Notre Dame QB again and lose to Marshall after coming back from lacrosse? Like, who knows? Like, but yeah, I got Notre Dame. Notre Dame's my 6. I feel like it kind of explained everything perfectly. So Notre Dame 6.
All right, my number 6, and I think we're gonna get a real good look at how things go for him this year, and the pressure is off, but it's also not off because I think in the back of their minds, Ohio State fans really still don't trust Ryan Day all that much. I know they won the national championship this year. You can't take that away from him. But he did lose Jim. Like, that was a weird situation. And I think a lot of it had to do with how much NIL money they had given out this last year. But they lose Jim Knowles to Penn State.
Do you think because they gave so much NIL, they gave so much NIL money out, they didn't have money to pay their assistants?
Well, it's just, if he had gone, like the Chip Kelly one makes sense to me. Like, all right, like, yeah, he's going off to the NFL to be part of the Raiders. It's always going to be hard to keep guys from going to the NFL in terms of, I guess, playing or coaching. But, they can, like, every team in the NFL can offer you money and droves. Colleges can too, but it's not NFL money. And it's the NFL. It's the biggest sport in the country, bar none. So, I like I said, though, national championship contender. However, losing your quarterback, losing your running backs, obviously you have the best receiver in football probably coming back, but that's a lot of change for a team to endure. Is you lose, like, you didn't just lose the coaches, you didn't just lose a lot of your best players, you lost a combination of both. So it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of do if you think that Ryan Day is like Nick Saban or Kirby Smart, then you have nothing to worry about. I don't necessarily believe that Ryan Day is Nick Saban or Kirby Smart. I think they had the highest NIL ever last year, and they'll kind of not backdoor their way into to being a national champion. That would sound stupid, but the whole 4 games, like that, we all love him now. That goes for Ryan Day too. Like, you beat Tennessee, you beat Oregon, you beat Texas, beat Notre Dame. All great wins, but you still have the Michigan cloud hanging over you. They're probably going to be a lot better. Oregon's still going to be there. You obviously have a huge talent advantage over basically everyone in the conference, with the exception of maybe Penn. Like, you still have more talent than Penn State, but Penn State's right there too if they could get over the hump. So we'll see with them. I'm very interested to see, though, how the next couple years goes for Ryan Day, because he does have that national championship now.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily know but I think the pressure is probably even more now to get back and do it again, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, I agree. And it'll be interesting to see. Like you said, Michigan's a lot better this year. Penn State's going to come back, and Ryan Day, I didn't even realize that. And one thing I am kind of excited for with Ohio State is Brian Hartline, longtime receiver coordinator, is finally the offensive coordinator. Let's see what he does. Because I'll tell you what, if Brian Hartline can call plays, he's going to be a hot commodity. I think as a head coach, because that guy can recruit. Moving on to number 5.
They start with Texas next year, Ohio State.
Little semi rematch. So halfway through, moving on to number 5. I have who I think is going to be the best team in the ACC and who I think is the Kansas State opposite. And what I mean by that is I think this team thrives when they are in the spotlight and basking in their own ego. And that is the Fighting Dabo Sweeneys of Clemson, South Carolina. I have at 5.
Number 5.
Awesome. I love this. We can double team this then. I think a lot of it has to do with I think a lot of people were out on Cade Klubnik, including myself. And I think he's kind of played his way back into being maybe this guy can be a day 3 pick after this year. Like, this guy looks pretty solid. You see Dabo's using the transfer portal now. Because they don't get a lot of guys transferring out, they return a lot of guys. I think a lot of people on Miami, a lot of people on Louisville, I think the ACC is Clemson's to lose. And that's why I got Clemson number 5.
Clemson is and you're not the biggest fan of this man, but Dabo and Clemson are very, and obviously like this team has way more of a history. They're like always a contender, all that stuff, but just their personalities, especially, and he's gone now, but he reminds me so much of Coach K in so many different levels.
Except Dabo, I think's got a little. I don't know. The difference between Coach K and Dabo is that Dabo, while he does seem like he loves his ego, it doesn't seem like he's like hooty tooty, like elitist. He just seems like he literally just loves the smell of his own farts.
When he got him, that's what's funny. It's like, it's not like Clemson has been bad under him after their little run they had. They just haven't been in the national championship every year like they were for that 3 to 5. Like, they're still winning like 9 or 10 games. So it's like, I think sometimes people talk about them like they have years like Florida State did last year, but that's not really the case. Like, they obviously aren't as good as they used to be, but I don't necessarily think that they're that like just a walkover all the time either. I know like Georgia killed them last year. They really struggled in those type of games, but I mean, like, they stuck with Cade Klubnik. I think now everyone can say like, oh yeah, DJ Lagaway was not the answer for them.
You mean DJ Ukulele?
Yes,
DJ
DJ Lagway would be the answer for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like Clemson at 5 because I think the ACC, like you said, is theirs to lose, and they're kind of like they've had the 3 or 4 mediocre-ish seasons in a row. I know they made the playoff last year, but they're kind of back to where they kind of want to be in like terms of no one's like, I mean, they'll get some coverage, but everyone has kind of moved on from like, oh, they're not as good as they used to be. But now that it's like, oh, yeah, there's Clemson. Like, they're okay. So
they're just around now. So I'm also looking forward to seeing that. All right. Number 4 team in the country. I hate them, but I respect the talent, and they return what should be probably, besides Arch Manning, the best, what a lot of people think could be the second best quarterback in the country. And that's Penn State, Drew Aller. I have at number 4. James Franklin, I think a little bit like Ryan Day. He gets the monkey off his back, but does he? Still doesn't win the Big Ten. Still, look, I I will respect you for beating 2 top 12 teams. You beat SMU and you beat Boise State. Those 2 teams have killed and beat a lot of good teams. So I think those are big wins. But if you ask a Penn State purist and diehard, yeah, they would have loved to seen you beat Ohio State or Miami. So it'll be interesting to see with Penn State. I don't. Part of me wants to put them higher. I think it's the James Franklin factor. So James Franklin factor keeps them at 4. The Franklin factor 4.
So I honestly think we might have, and we will be covering college basketball some going forward. Is James Franklin just Jay Wright?
No, Jay Wright won championships.
He did.
Jay Wright won,
but
championships.
It took him. He got there in, which I didn't even know this until the other day. He got there in 01 and 02. They made the Final Four in 08, 09, but he didn't win a championship until 2015, 2016. And you have a bunch of.
No, I think it's different. I think it's different because I think Jay Wright, Villanova's different. Where like you can kind of, it's a big East, and Jay Wright is not like James Franklin. Maybe they have the same career path. I think they have completely different personalities. Jay Wright is totally like, hey, it's not about me, all of this. Like, we're going to do everything, even if it means like sucking up some of his pride. James Franklin would throw a hot dog at like a ref if it meant he got like a call.
James Franklin is Dan Hurley without the success.
Who we also will be shortly talking about. But yeah, I have Penn State is my number 4. Zooch, do you also got them at 4?
I do not have. I actually have Penn State a little bit higher than 4. I'm fairly high on Penn State next year, which is probably gonna.
Then who's your 4? Who's your 4? We got to know.
Number 4, and it's gonna make a certain member of my family who has been through some emotional distress since he's had Nick Saban retire. He is recently, in the past month, he has told me he has quit on the Dallas Cowboys and the Dallas Mavericks. It's been a rough go for Greg, but I do have his Alabama Crimson Tide
as
the number 4 team.
Why? Get 30 seconds. Why?
Great recruiting. They still are recruiting at a high level. Kalen DeBoer has won everywhere there's really, to me, no reason to, I guess, yeah, they had the 4 losses last year. Not a good season by any stretch of the imagination. But to me, they're still Alabama. Great head coach, great recruiting. I think quarterback was definitely an issue last year. There's a lot of issues with that team, and a lot of games got away from them. They the Michigan if anyone had told me after seeing how Michigan started last year that they would end up their last 2 games of the season would beat freaking Ohio State and Alabama, I would have given them like 100,000 to 1 odds. I'd be like, there is no chance that happens, but I'll take your money. But I just think they're going to be. I think they have a strong shot of winning the SEC.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. Well, I'm choosing a team as my 3 seed that I also think has a really strong chance, and that's Georgia. Need I say more? I think Gunnar Stockton, what's going to help him, even though he didn't look the best, I think getting those, what I call them, free reps in the games before is going to set him up for success. Georgia, now the receiver position is still a concern. It's going to take one of their transfers or one of their younger guys to step up. But Georgia, like the old days of Alabama, it's a machine. It's Kirby Smart. He's got 90% of people's number in this country. I don't even Georgia's the one team where I feel like I don't even have to go in depth. Georgia's become the new Alabama where you just go Georgia. And
it's always with those type of teams that right when people start kind of trying to want to write them off, they rattle off 3 of the next 4 national championships. And you're like, well, we thought they were done. It appears not, because they just beat so-and-so 58-10 in the semifinal game. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so
Georgia, 3.
Georgia at number 3. You'll be glad to know is my number 3 team going into next year, slightly ahead of Alabama, the Georgia Bulldogs.
Oh, saved.
Georgia,
Wait a minute. I don't want to. Okay, go for it, Zooch, because I have something that I need to say that I'm seeing. I'm like Paul Atreides, Delisan Al-Gaib. I'm seeing ahead right now into your picks. So go ahead.
Georgia, and it's also just like to add on to like that's what we should add to this show is like shocking conclusions to the season. It's not like Ohio State winning the national championship. It's like the Michigan beating Ohio State and Alabama. Also, the fact that Carson Beck is going to be the quarterback for Miami, which I forgot to even talk about when I had Miami in my top 10. He is the quarterback.
He is going to be a problem in South Beach if things go poorly. There is going to be. We might need an hour on the list. Let's just say that. And Danny Boy Kane, who has blocked me, needs to unblock me so I can talk to him and see what he's thinking about Carson Beck.
He at some point next season, I expect to hop on TikTok and see a Cavender twin video of like, oh yeah, he is just running around me with every blonde-headed girl at the South Beach clubs. And yep, I know Miami is 8-0 and number 4 in the nation, and he's getting Heisman talk, but this is what Carson Beck is doing. Don't let the tattoo sleeves fool you. But yeah, I agree with you on Georgia. Like, great team in a weird way. Like, people are kind of talking down on them the last couple years, which is maybe not as much last year. The year before was stupid to me. It's like, all right, they lost to Alabama by a possession in the SEC championship game and got left out of the 4-team playoff. They were great in 2023, 2024. They were not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they didn't win the national championship, but if you lose to Alabama, who was in the playoff by a possession, I don't think that makes you really a step down. I guess is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, we'll see with them. Kirby has a lot of propaganda he can use that he's just been.
Oh yes,
he's been cooking it up for.
Kim Jong Kirby has been cooking it up. We will see what Kirby Smart uses. As my number 2 team in the country going into next year, my way too early, top 10, subject to change. I have Ohio State because I want to get the Buckeye fans off my back. I give you respect. You guys are the national champion, the defending national champion, and you return probably the best player in the country, Jeremiah Smith. Like, he is the best returning player if you truly break it down positionally. Maybe not the most valuable, obviously quarterback, edge rusher, those positions are more valuable than a receiver, but Jeremiah Smith is the best player in the country.
Yeah.
Him being on your team is going to make that offense even more dynamic. I have no doubt that Ohio State will replace or get close to replace all of the talent it's losing, but there is a team I have ahead of them. And you haven't chose this team yet, and I know it's either your 1 or 2, which means, do you have 3 SEC teams in your top 4? Zooch, what is your number 2?
My number 2, going into this season.
Yep.
The Texas Longhorns, which I did see, and I don't think we have a list segment tonight, but I did see an A&M fan post a tweet today that said, the girl I accidentally shacked up with on Saturday night is wearing the jersey I left at her place to class today. And it was just a picture of Steve Sarkisian sad and outside the locker room after Texas lost. I was like, all right, you need worry about your own coach and his reading glasses, always looking confused.
Also, sorry to get on an A&M tangent. People can wear what they wear. Can Mike Elko stop wearing the thin golf hoodies? Can that guy get that guy needs to be in a Bo Pelini, the most cottony of cotton, gray sweaters. Just that's what he needs to wear.
He needs to have the gray sweater and possibly gray sweater, maroon hat, and then maybe like those really thick black gloves for that day after Thanksgiving game. That's how I imagine him coaching on the sideline. Maybe a beanie if it's a real chilly. But yeah, I have Texas is my number 2. I think they're going to be great. The expectations are sky high. Speaking of lists, you might, if Arch Manning doesn't start out great, might see some horrible things said about the Manning family. Like they will.
Yeah. No, it's terrible. It's
terrible things and say that about them. So Arch, just be good.
And Arch is definitely, and let's call a spade a spade. Arch definitely has a burner. Like Arch has a burner. People forget Arch is Cooper's son. Cooper Manning, if there was a burner verse in the 80s and 90s, Cooper Manning would be the king burner.
Yeah, he would be like, oh, Mississippi State fan, you said Eli sucks. Well, guess what? All the girls that go to your school look like pigs. That is what Cooper Manning would be tweeting, and eventually it would get out, and Eli Manning would have to address the situation, which Eli Manning himself might have a burner. I'm not like Peyton Manning is Eli think doesn't have a burner.
Peyton Manning doesn't have a burner. Eli definitely, because of his ESPN stuff, is like, oh, I don't have a burner. He definitely knows what the burner verse is. Yep. There's no way a Signu at Ole Miss doesn't know what the burner verse is. I'm just calling this, but yeah, Texas is my number 1 team. So to piggyback off you, I got Texas at number 1 for the reasons that you said, and I am ready to put all the eggs in the Arch Manning basket. And I've hyped it up for a year, and I put all my eggs in the Arch Manning basket, and I want to stake it now. Arch Manning, front runner for the Heisman. I'm not going to pick him for Heisman yet. I want to see how some things shake out in the offseason, but Texas, they got the one guy returning. Oh my gosh, but the safety or the defender, he's returning. Arch is returning. And if Texas wins the national championship, and like I said, this is way too early. You are going to see Pandora's box open. I just want to put that out there. So, but Texas is my number 1. Zooch, finish us off. Who is your number 1 team going in? Way too early. Subject to change. Going into the year.
Subject to change, and Lord forgive me for making this my number 1 team going into the off season, because it has just always gone wrong for them. And I am putting since we will be going to my bachelor party in Vegas here soon, I won't say it's equivalent to putting money on the zero or double zero in roulette, but it's,
oh, you're that guy.
It's okay. It's picking like 4 random numbers and hoping one of them hits. Like, I don't know the exact math in that. There's what, like
35?
35, I think, numbers.
Yeah.
Penn State is my number 1 team going into the off season. I am kind of a Drew Aller defender. Not defender. I don't think he's been great by any means. I do not think he is nearly as bad as people.
People like who? People like the person in the screen left to you, maybe?
No, you have one point of like, all right, like he hasn't, won the big game, all that kind of stuff. I'm more talking about like the stat people. Like, I mean, we see it every year with like the Heisman stuff. Yeah, Drew Aller doesn't have the stats that Cam Moore does or Dylan Gabriel or someone like that. Also, Penn State's offense is not designed like those 2 teams' offenses. Like, hate on Drew Aller for the throw in the Notre Dame game. Also, his receivers just weren't getting open. A receiver didn't have a freaking catch in the game. Like, that's...
Yeah, when Julian Fleming is your number 1 overall receiver, you might have some issues.
It's kind of... And, like, I'm not comparing the 2 guys in terms of quarterbacking. Obviously, one is a trillion times better than the other one. But it would kind of be in that game, like that one throw being like, oh, that just shows you Drew Aller sucks. It's kind of like, to me, if you just put the whole Chiefs loss to the Eagles and tried to say it was because of Patrick Mahomes. Like,
no, that's fair.
It's
That's fair.
like Mahomes didn't have a great game. Also, he was, it was a different type of a different part of the offense that wasn't doing anything. It was the offensive line. They could not block. But I do think even though it was SMU and Boise State, that those were big games for Penn State to get out there and win. They did lose Notre Dame game. That game was close. Yes, Drew Aller didn't make a good throw at the end of the game. I still kind of believe, though, you're going out there to try to win the game. You
Fair.
know that your offense hasn't really gotten it going. You're going into this overtime that the rules suck. I don't care what anyone says. You have two not even regular drives, 2 drives from the 25, and then this 2-point conversion thing, which I hate, and I've said I hated forever. I think it's the dumbest way to ever decide a winner of all time.
Oh, I love it. It's sicko. That's you have to just embrace the wild and just like
it also breaks coaches' brains because in that Georgia Tech game last year, it went to like 9 overtimes, right?
Because they just start doing crazy plays. It's like just honestly, if you're a good running team, just run like a variation of an inside handoff or like an outside handoff every time, and you'll score within a couple times.
Right? It's like, oh, Hayes King, we've had a great running game all night, especially with Hayes King. Let's try to throw it to the back corner of the end zone 4 times in a row instead of running it up, like you said, doing a read option with Hayes King, which has worked 40 times in this game, so much so that he's like has broken ribs. So we'll just get away from that and just try to do all this craziness. But anyway, back to the original point. Penn State, I think, has a great they are my number 1 team, and if they don't make the national championship game or the Final Four, at least if they have like a first round exit or don't make it, at that point you do have to move on because you cannot go out, get Jim Knowles, have a guy coming back at quarterback for his 3rd year, have been a play or 2 away from the national championship the previous year, and go back from that. They weren't like an all-in team like Ole Miss or to a certain extent Ohio State, someone like that. So they've got to.
It's completely fair, and I think I agree a little bit.
Yeah, I think they're going to be like they always are. They're going to probably get to 10 wins unless the wheels for some reason just fall off, which doesn't usually happen under James Franklin. I know they've had 2 or 3 5-loss seasons, but that's more so in his first few years there. Since then, it's been Michigan, Ohio State, and then them. Now you add Oregon to the mix, I guess. So we'll see. We'll see if I look like an idiot.
Will. Like we always say, this is all subject to change, and change it will be subject to, which means we will both be changing these after spring ball when we do our before fall camps top 10. But before we get into the last part of the show, the blind rankings new segment, we just got to touch a little bit on college basketball. We always do. Was talking to Zooch before the show. My college basketball has been this year is way lower than it was last year because I had checked out of Boise State football in November, so I got to watch a little more college basketball. So Zooch, I just wrote down 5 things just watching college basketball on and off for 2 weeks since I've been like starting to get back into it. Number 1, Patinos are back. New Mexico and St. John's doing well.
Rick Pitino video is hilarious today of him in the locker room.
Oh,
I've never faced adversity in your life. Who raised you?
He's insane. He has had some great sound bites too. The inside, I want to kill myself. Outside, we just keep going forward. That was all-time video to save.
Yeah.
Number 2, Cooper Flag, very good. Another victory for the White Boys? ? The Cooper DeJean, Cooper Flag,
Riley.
yeah, different Cooper. Jeez. Daytona was this last weekend. Like, I mean, this is good. Those are two with Cooper DeJean and Cooper Flagg. Let's just say historically, not been two things the white boys are good at. So Cooper Flagg could be the first white American since 1978, I think. Bill Walton to be drafted number 1 overall. So that'll be interesting to see. Number 3, UConn, bad.
That was
They're
bad. The Seton Hall one was a
they're
brutal
bad.
loss.
And they got Aiden Mahaney, the star guy from St. Mary's, kind of where I'm from, and they just look they look like a team that's trying to play like UConn. It's almost like to be like, yeah, like we're gonna be scrappy. It's like, dude, just play. So I got UConn bad.
We are gonna put an asterisk by this and say subject to change if they are in the Final Four, which would not
just going
me.
to Big East. Yeah. Oh, 100%. Number 5 or no, number 4. So it's a lot of lists in today's episode, but the state of Alabama, very good at basketball this year. Bruce Pearl, his best friend's in the White House now, so he's just so happy. Maybe that Auburn just looks really good. Like I watched that Alabama game. Alabama looks good. NATO always has his teams ready to go, but Auburn looks really, really good this year.
Yeah, they're a force to be reckoned with, is from what I can tell after having, watched them. I will say, though, I am putting Auburn fan on the list for when Johnny Broome, however you say his last name, came back, and people were like, oh, wow, he came back early. And somebody said, oh, well, that's because Bruce Pearl told him, I'll skin you alive if you cost me a trip to the White House. It needs to stop.
Oh my goodness.
He looks out for his players. Just Auburn fans.
Deep
Take
breaths.
it easy. Take it easy.
And the last thing is actually news that just came out today. I want to get your quick opinion on it, Zooch. The NCAA tournament could be expanding. I mean, what will the field of 68 do? They'll have to change their handle. Our best friend, oh my gosh, what was that tool's name? Oh my gosh, Zooch, I can't believe I'm mind blanking right now. I got to get back into college basketball. What's his name? Jeff. Like the guy who's a tool, like the Big East tool. Jeff Goodman?
Jeff Goodman.
John Goodman. Or is it John Goodman or Jeff Goodman? Yeah.
One of the two. John Goodman's the actor, I believe.
Yeah, Jeff Goodman, I think, runs Field of 68. If we're wrong, this is all a joke. But yeah, they said that they might expand it. I'm not a fan. Now, I think they'd expand it in the best way, where they would essentially make like every 10 or 11 seed like a first 4 game. So you just add more teams in that way. But come on now. Like, you know what I mean?
It doesn't need to be expanded. I don't know. Like, I love the NCAA tournament. Some of the stuff is dumb to me, that being one of them. Also, it's stupid to me to have 2 of the games be the 16 teams playing each other.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. No one's going to be like, I got to watch this game because my bracket is like, you'll have some people who are like, oh.
Texas A&M Corpus Christi is always in that game. It seems like they're.
And like Southern, like the SWAC team is forever in that game. But like some people with the 11th seed will be like, oh, like, I don't know, like, oh, if UCLA wins this game against Missouri or whoever, then I'll have them beating 6th seed St. Mary's or like whatever it is. But like the 11th seed games are interesting. The 16 seed games, they aren't. I'm sorry.
No, it's fair. That's completely fair. And just a little heads up, everyone, we are doing the Zooch and Wilde Bracket Challenge again. We're going to keep plugging it every show from here on out. You'll be getting more updates sooner, too. Actual March Madness. Zooch, anything else on college basketball before we get into the inaugural blind rankings? And I think I got a funny one. I think this one's going to be funny.
It's all right. On the line for Boise State tomorrow.
On the line. The season's over. Don't tell anyone on Twitter, though. And people on Twitter, be nice to the corral. if you're a 20-year-old student and Boise State had just had the year of their life in football, and the basketball team had shown you it has won in the past, and then the media just spews every year in basketball, this is the best team ever, what would you want to do on a Tuesday or a Friday? Get really drunk with all your friends and watch the game from a TV, or go to the freaking a stadium with no luxury boxes that somehow takes even longer to get in sometimes than Albertson Stadium and has a gosh darn indoor tile track around it.
Yeah.
Love the X, but come on, guys. Come on. Just started selling. There's only like one place that sells beer in that stadium, too. I feel like it's better just to roll in just with a box of Cracker Jacks or something. But we're going to be the last thing we're going to do is blind rankings. Now, Zooch talked about this right before we went on our little off-season break, but this is where someone from another member has settled down, one of us, or one of you guys, if you guys have any topics we want to do. We're going to blind rank 5 people, things, mascots, games, and they don't know what's going to come. I'm sure everyone on the internet is very up to date of what a blind ranking was. So you kind of got to get a feel like this ranking is supposed to be funny. It's not going to be a true ranking because you kind of got to do some playing of what's going to come next. I feel like I'm explaining blind rankings to people that already know them, like already get the concept. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just don't take it too seriously, is what we're saying.
Well, it's a good thing because this first inaugural blind rankings topic is average quarterbacks of the 2010s. And I want you to rank them 1 to 5, on 1 being the best. You're not ranking the most average. Dude, it'll be the best. So 1 is the best, 5 is the worst out of these quarterbacks that I'll name, and 4, 3, 2 is in the middle. All right, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, we are going to start with a softball. Jake Coker.
5.
Where do you 5? Jake Coker is at 5. Okay. Yeah. Jake Coker, ex-Bama quarterback at 5. The next one, Brad Kaya from Miami.
He was committed to Boise State at one point. I haven't heard that name. That's like the Obi-Wan. I haven't heard that name. Brad Kaya.
I mean, I just how this has started. I think you think I have way better quarterbacks than I do. I have some absolute pulls on here. Jake Coker, look at the guy won a national championship.
He did. Also, Jake Coker, I saw him take 1 snap, and I was like, "Yep, I'll see him on the NFL Network ticker that says undrafted free agent." And after 1 snap, I saw that. I like Jake Coker, but he was not like we all knew what he was. Jake Coker knew what he was.
All right,
I'll put Brad Kaya. I'll put him at 3. I'll keep him at 3.
Okay. All right. At number, all right, Brad Kaya at 3. The next one, dude, I can't even say it. I can't even say it with a straight face. Anu Solomon. So. Anu Solomon, Fiesta Bowl appearance. Anu Solomon.
He was
Scooby Wright. Rich Rod.
He went to like TCU, didn't he, or something like that afterwards?
I don't know. I'm gonna
put Anu Solomon was a one-hit wonder. I'm gonna put him at 4. So I have 3, 4, and 5.
You know, it's actually not okay. At number the next one I'll say, Davis Webb, ex-Texas Tech, Cal quarterback, played little on the Giants. Where do you have Davis Webb?
You know what? I know what I'm getting with Davis Webb. Not going to be terrible. I mean, probably if he was on the right team, would have won a lot more games. I'll put Davis Webb at 1. I'm comfortable with Davis Webb being the quarterback I get so far.
You know what? I like this so far. This is where I think it's going to take a turn for the worse. Because so right now you have Jake Coker 5, Anu Solomon 4, Brad Kaya 3, Davis Webb 1. That's actually, I think he actually did a decent job there. Maybe.
Yeah, I'll take David. I thought Davis Webb was pretty good.
But here is where I think things may take a turn for the worse for you, because the last player I have, and the only spot you have is number 2. I have Wilton Spate, ex Michigan and UCLA quarterback.
Yeah, he is. He is Jake Coker-esque. Like
Yes.
the apple doesn't fall far from that tree when it comes to those two. That he was another one that was just like you knew going into those games, you're like, this guy's gonna throw it like 9 times through the first 3 quarters, and then it'll pick up if they're not winning.
All right, honestly, not terrible. It could have been a lot worse. So the final list we have Jake Coker 5, Anu Solomon 4, Brad Kaya 3, Wilton Spate 2, Davis Webb 1. That's going to be the graphic. Sean, Zach, whoever edits this, that's the graphic. A couple players who barely missed out on making this funny cut was thinking about doing one of the Martinez's from Nebraska, either Taylor or Adrian. That would have been funny. Another one I almost did, Zooch, was your guy Bo Wallace, this OGD bag, and almost did Brock Osweiler. Although I felt like he was actually good in college, so I feel like he would have been. I couldn't have more than one Davis Webb. I had to Davis Webb was going to be the best one I had, and I almost did one that would have been so stupid and such a deep pull that people would have been like, why are you even doing this, Diego? You're only doing it to make yourself laugh. And that's Zach Maynard. Do you remember Zach Maynard at Cal? Almost did Zach Maynard and almost did Kevin Hogan. But again, I feel like Kevin Hogan was actually like good.
Yeah.
Like Kevin Hogan is okay. Kevin Hogan, this is another clip for you. Kevin Hogan is the Michael Jordan of Jake Cokers. Does that make sense?
It does. No, he absolutely would be the Michael Jordan. There was and I don't even. It's changed a little bit now. You don't. I feel like you see some teams that are like still the 50, 60 passes a game, but there was a time between like when the Alabama dynasty started up until about COVID, where there was like not really a happy medium. You either had like, oh, yep, we're gonna come out and we're gonna have oh my god, who is the USC quarterback who went to Pitt? I can see his face. He's on like
Edon Slovis.
Well, there was Max Brown. That's who I was thinking.
Max Brown. Dude, that guy's like killing it social media wise now.
Yeah. You either had like him where it was like, all right, we're going to let you throw it like 49 times, or you had you're going to throw the ball 12 times if we are down by 2 scores in the fourth quarter. Then like we're just going to run crossing routes like 25 times in a row and hope it works. And it really was a great time for football because it would always be so funny because like you'd get like one of those bowl games that would be like Texas Tech versus Minnesota or something like that, and they'd be like, oh yep, this guy's thrown it 7,000 times this year, and then the Minnesota quarterback would come in and be like, season stats 114 for 159, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. You're like, all right, well, the guy from Texas Tech, like you had that even when Mahomes was at Texas Tech, they had that game where he legitimately had like 9 passing touchdowns or
that was crazy.
Whatever it was.
It's funny. I think now the one thing, and I'll end it on this. The one funny thing we do get now, and is I think I part of the reason why I hate it, but it's just so funny, is the teams that continue to buy in on these quarterbacks that have been there for like 7 years or 6 years. Like Cam Ward, I think, is an anomaly because he started at Incarnate Word and then honestly probably could have gone to the NFL after Washington State if he was okay with being a day 2 or day 3 pick. But like Cam Ward's is the anomaly. Like it's so funny, like the Cam Risings of the world or the oh my gosh, who's that freaking guy? The Alex Bowmans of the world. Like when will teams learn that like these guys, the Tyler Van Dykes, like these guys, they're in college for so long for a reason.
Well, it's almost like, and this is I guess what I'll end on. that they look at other positions and other positions in sports. Like, I don't know, you'll see like a team in the NBA Finals or a team in the Stanley Cup, team in the World Series, and they'll be talking about a certain guy they traded for, right? And
Mhm.
very rarely is it like you have some like I'm not talking about like the Luka Doncic trade or anything like that, but like, you know, you'll see like, oh, like whoever the Dodgers traded for this guy and but that guy comes in as like their third or fourth pitcher or like a reliever who is like you traded for him to like eat up 2 or 3 innings so your better relievers can get
That's
rest
true.
because they can't like pitch, or oh, we brought in this guy to come off the bench because he's really good at defense and can give so and so a break when Steph Curry's out there or something like that. And that's not like what the quarterback position is. Like you never see like, oh, yep, we lost. They never bring in anyone, but it would kind of be the equivalent of like the Angels being like, oh yeah, like I know we lost Shohei Ohtani, but you know who we brought in, and he's so and so who has like a 207 batting average
Yeah.
with like 9 home runs. Like they try to combine those things, and that's not what like trades are for in general. Like I said, yes, you get blockbuster trades, like they happen quite a bit, but the mass influx of trades and really I would say transfers are to fill holes and not supposed to really be your best positions. Like every once in a while you get a team like Ole Miss who just bolstered their defensive line with transfers. And you're like, oh,
Yeah,
okay, like yeah. Like
but
that
then you could
is
say
one
that's
thing.
only like that's still only one position. Like the transfer
Right.
portal isn't meant to fill your entire defense. I mean,
No.
you can, but like I guess we'll see.
Good luck, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, yep, we have the Zooch and Wilde Bracket Challenge coming up. I believe Section Selection Sunday is like a month from today or so. Let me look that
Yeah,
up real
it
quick.
is. No, it's that week because we're gonna be recording the show
Yeah, it's less than a month. March 16th,
early.
so 4 weeks.
Probably, yeah. Well, we'll have to record earlier that week to get that episode out before Vegas. But yeah, we're excited. We're going to be doing this every 2 weeks, so we'll see you guys in 2 weeks with a little bit more of a college basketball update. And please, please, please get ready for the bracket challenge and tell your friends. We had such a great showing last year. Like seriously away with the amount of participation we had, and we want to get that same, even better participation this year. Also, there's going to be some Vegas content too, so stay in tune for that in a month. But
It's going to be a
that
good
being
time.
said, it will be a good time. That being said, Godspeed, Zooch. Anything else?
Nothing else. Get caught up on basketball if you're not the biggest college basketball fans, which I would say we are big March Madness fans. We are
I am
here.
big funny fans. I am big
Yep.
funny and laughing at Rick Pitino clips fans.
Rick
All right.
Pitino's great. Dan Hurley's great. So yeah, we will see y'all in a couple weeks.
Godspeed. See y'all in a couple weeks.